Hello, how are you, Algebra? As we wrap up the year, we are going to plan a vacation. We're going to use skills that we've learned all throughout the year, especially in Chapter 6, as far as writing our answers. But we are going to plan a vacation. You and a partner are going to go anywhere in the United States that you'd like. It needs to be a memorable trip. It cannot be any more than $3,500, but you have to spend as much money as possible, okay? So this is not a trip that you want to plan as far as budgeting and trying to get everything done for the least amount of money. You actually want to spend all of your $3,500 if you can. But there are some parameters. So here, I'm going to introduce the project so that you know what you're doing. All right, page 1 tells us an overview of the project. For your transportation, you need to spend between 10% and 40% of your $3,500 budget. So you're going to write that inequality here. What's your minimum? What's your maximum? And then what's your inequality sign in between the transportation? So I'm writing that as a compound inequality. So figure out your minimum and your maximum, and then here write it as an inequality, a compound inequality. You're going to do the same thing for lodging, but that's 30 to 40%. So what's your number going to be? What's your number going to be? You have to figure that out. We learned how to find percent in a previous chapter. So look at that. Chapter 3 or 4, we were working on percent. I can't remember anymore. So then you need to move on to food. And there's certain parameters with that, which I'll discuss in a minute. And excursions. Excursions are your fun. So excursions, I'll explain in a few minutes. All right. You have several requirements that you need to do. You cannot travel in Wisconsin, and you can't really go to Chicago either. Too close. So who are you traveling with? Who's your partner? Where are you going to go? Those are decisions that you need to make. You might want to do a little bit of research first. Okay, here's the parameters. You have to travel over our Martin Luther Christmas break. You must stay a minimum of 4 days and a maximum of 6 days. Ooh, what would that inequality be? My stay is a minimum of 4 days and a maximum of 6 days. What are my inequality signs going to be in this compound inequality? Make sure that you have that filled in. Okay, now write in an inequality for when you're leaving. I'm departing after December 23rd, so does this have to be less than, greater than, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to? Which one? So think about that, and you have to return before January 9th. Because on December 23rd, we have finals still. And so we aren't skipping any of our finals. And on January 9th, we're returning for our first day of the semester. We want to get off to a great start. So you have to be here on January 9th. So as you're doing some research and doing some things, what will your travel dates be? That goes here. All right. So as we're looking at transportation is what we're going to do on Monday or day 1 of this project, whatever day of the week it lands on. Technically day 2, because day 1 we do an overview and you decide where you're going to go. Day 2, you're figuring out your transportation. Now, we said that our transportation needs to be 10% to 40% of our $3,500 budget. So that inequality goes here so that we stay in those guidelines. We'd like you to price out 2 different options: plane, train, bus, car, Uber, rental car, taxi, whatever type of transportation you want to use. And then you're going to pick that and explain why. So when you're looking at travel, it's important, though, to think about how long your travel time is, how much of your vacation is going to be used up by travel. Do you want to drive because maybe it's cheaper? But if you're driving, you have to account for fuel. You can assume that you're starting with a full tank of gas and you don't need to factor that in. But you are going to have to get gas on the way down. And if you choose to fly, then how are you going to get around when you're on your vacation? Because you're going to need to do that. So when you're on vacation, if you fly, are you renting a car? Are you using an Uber? Are you using a taxi? Are you using local transportation? And if so, how much does that cost for your specific city? Okay? If you're getting fuel halfway to your destination, you need to research how much the average cost of fuel is in that city. Okay? So you have to kind of think about where you're going, look at some maps, do some calculations and things like that. So this is a real life thing. All right. I'm going to look at option 1 and then I'm going to look at option 2. At the end here, you're going to tell us which option you picked and why you picked it and what your total cost is. Don't forget that you need to return. So if you're flying, you need a round trip ticket. If you're flying, you need transportation when you get there. Okay, so lodging. Lodging needs to be between 30 and 40% of your $3,500 budget. Again, we want you to price out 2 different options. Are you going to stay in an Airbnb? Are you going to stay at a resort where some other things are included? Condominium, a hotel, a motel, camper, tent. If you're looking at a camper, do you own the camper? If you own the camper, you need to consider campsite fees. Are there any fees for dumping your tanks, things like that? And think about how much each of those cost. The only thing is you cannot stay with family. So you can't have free lodging. You do have to spend your money on lodging. You do have to spend at least 30% of your budget on lodging. And if you think about it, even a campsite's not going to be 30%, but you do have fuel costs and things like that, electric. There's a lot of things that go into camping. So, again, you're going to have 2 options. Whoops, I didn't want to go forward. I wanted to go down. 2 options. You're going to tell us why you picked what you picked, and then price per night, how many nights, and your total. Keep in mind that if you're staying 4 nights or 4 days, if you're staying 4 days, you're going to have 3 nights. If you're staying 6 days, you're going to have 5 nights. So keep those numbers in mind. Okay? Next, let's talk food. Food has to be anywhere from 5 to 15% of your budget. You can find ways to bring food costs down, like go to the grocery store, things like that. Make sure you have your inequality filled in here. Now, here's the thing. Our breakfast, and you do, whether you regularly eat breakfast or not, you still need to plan for breakfast, okay? And that needs to be 15% of your budget. Lunch needs to be 10%. Although those could switch if you're more of a lunch eater than a breakfast eater. It's just most people on vacation, when they've got lots of things planned, fun things to do, their lunch budget is usually lower than breakfast, okay? But you do need to spend money on this. You need to figure out what your minimum, so your minimum breakfast budget. So that's 15% of your actual budget. So once you find this minimum maximum, what's your 15% of that number? And then what's your 15% of your maximum number? So of your 15% of the total budget, what's the maximum number you're going to be spending on food for breakfast? And you'll be surprised, it's actually not that much. Keep in mind, you do have to split that up over the number of breakfasts you're going to have for your trip. So if you have 4 breakfasts, your 15% of this 5% number is going to be split up over 4. And same thing with lunch, okay? Dinner. Dinner is different. Dinner, you need to actually research and find dinner restaurants that you're going to eat at. Now, you can do some fast food, but you need to find at least 2 sit-down restaurants in the city that you're going to. And spoil yourself a little bit. You have 75% of your food budget that you can spend on dinners. So you've got a little bit more money here, and it's fake money. So find a really nice restaurant, maybe not out of your price range, but in your price range, and tell me what you're going to get from those dinners. Okay, what restaurants you're going to eat at, how much are both your meals, things like that. Like in general, what did you order? Okay, so this is a little bit more detailed, and you need to make sure you stay within your budget, but you also need to spend a little bit more money here. And then you're going to add up all of your breakfasts, lunches, and dinners and give us your total cost. All right, next, excursions. So you want to have fun on your vacation, right? So some people have talked about maybe doing the Mall of America. Going around and just shopping is not an excursion. An excursion is a ticketed item. So if you're riding the Ferris wheel and that takes a ticket, then you can count that as the Mall of America as an excursion if you're doing some of the activities within the Mall of America. Now, shopping itself can happen if and only if you have extra money. Bring home some souvenirs, tell me what you're going to bring home, things like that. But that's if and only if you have extra money after paying for transportation, lodging, meals, and your at least 2 excursions, but at most 5 excursions. So if you choose to take some tours, Segway tours are really fun, and those are offered in most cities. Bike tours are fun. You could go horseback riding, you could go to some museums. Down in Georgia, I've done the Martin Luther King. There's a couple different Martin Luther King tours that are really, really cool. But look at what you want to do. Price out what you want to do. Tell us how much each of those costs. Do your price comparisons here, and then tell us what your final decisions were down here and your total cost. So at least 2, at most 5, you need to tell us what you're going to do for fun. If you have extra money in your final budget, then you can do some shopping. But shopping itself is not an excursion. Okay. If you have any questions, message me, unless you were in class, and ask them, and we can go from there. Have fun with this. It's fun to see where you guys want to go and what you want to do. So make sure that you enjoy your planning of the trip, but then also make it a fun trip. So we'll take care of each day separately. And if you finish that day, then you'll move on to the next one. And then we're going to do a quick presentation on Friday. Thank you, and God bless.